let's jump into this here, Chris. This
Yeah.
is something else we'd kind of talked about too, and that is Alabama. We kind of touched on that in the last episode, but let me ask you this. I know you have one side of it here. You have a take. I have a take. What are your thoughts on how Alabama does this year?
Okay. I know that you're gonna throw a bunch of stats at me. And I know you're a Georgia fan, diehard, grew up there, right? You guys hate Bama. I am not from the SEC. I am not a Nick Saban fan. I could get into that someday and tell you why I don't like the guy, and it's not because what most people dislike about him. But I think Bama makes the playoffs again. I truly do. I think it pissed off Saban last year. I watched your boy David Pollock on College Game Day, sitting right next to him, hyping up, said Georgia's new Alabama right in front of him. I think Nick Saban made a look at him like, I don't know. Saban, I will say this about the guy, arguably the greatest coach ever in college football. What he has done the last 15 years at Alabama is insane to me with the transfer portal, all the stuff going on. The guy's amazing. I mean, he can coach. Now, he's had great coaches. Yes, he's had great players, but he started that whole thing. He came from LSU, actually started at Michigan State, I believe, or whatever. Or actually was in the NFL, went to Michigan State, was a successful coach. I remember when 95, we kicked his ass at Michigan State, Nebraska did. Gets his way over to LSU, gets a national title, goes to my Dolphins, runs them in the ground, quits. He goes to Alabama, and that's how Alabama started, right? So this year for me, I do think they're back in the playoff. I don't know what their record is, and I don't think you not get in with more than one loss, but I think he gets there. I know you're going to throw all these crazy stats. I know players have left. It might be the downfall. I could be totally wrong on this, but I still think he's got a couple years left in that guy to get himself either competing for another national title or gets one. I truly do. Give me your take, Christian. What do you got, man?
Yeah, I think, first of all, it's insulting that you would say that I would throw stats out there and not continue to throw passes, but here's the reality of the situation. You're absolutely right. You are absolutely motherfucking right. Alabama ranks 125th, okay, in returning production. I forgot, which website I pulled this off of, but it was one of those websites where they go through and they look at all the returning production and everything like that. Granted, who they do have coming back, still pretty talented. I'm not going to deny them that. They signed the number one recruiting class this year. But it takes time. We talked about it a little bit, I think, with the previous segment, we were talking about Colorado. You can have the most talented, team out there. You could recruit all-stars. I mean, look at what Ohio State does. The thing is you have to have some experience to kind of go along with that. Alabama lost massive amounts of talent and production this year, to include their quarterback. They got to figure out the quarterback position. They lost, pretty much. They lost, I think it was, yeah, I mean, pretty much at every level on their defense, they lost somebody too. Yep. They lost, Eli Ricks, who was a cornerback for him, if I'm not mistaken. They lost Will Anderson. They lost Henry To'oTo'o, who's their middle linebacker back there. I think it was DJ Turner. I think he's going, if I'm not mistaken, who's a defensive tackle for him, or Dallas Turner. Maybe I got that wrong there, but yeah, so they're losing all kinds of players back there, and I think they're losing one of their safeties too, if I'm not mistaken. So they're losing a lot.
Side of the ball is going to be rough, bro, for them. But they lost a ton of experience back there.
Offense is going to be a little rough too. They lost Jahmyr Gibbs, who was one of their best running backs last year. They lost, oh my God, I mean, I think 3 or 4 of their wide receivers transferred out, if I'm not mistaken.
And that, to me, and I want to ask you a question off of this. Yeah. Last year watching Bama, and I watched a lot of Bama last how many years now, they've always had great receivers. Jamison Williams, Jerry Jeudy, you go through that crazy class, Henry Ruggs and all those guys, right? And Jalen Waddle and all those dudes. They've kind of been wide receiver competing with Ohio State most years on that. And last year, they really didn't have anybody. I mean, John Mechie was another guy from the year before, but tore his ACLs with the Lions now, I think, or Texas now. Yeah. But, I mean, they don't have – last year was really weak, in my opinion, for what they have for receivers. And I kind of wonder why the guys that they did have in there, why do you think they transferred? I mean, I'm really surprised by that because they've been really dominant at wide receiver the last 5 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think, here, and I've kind of said this for a little bit now, I think part of it is this is an off season where if you're grading Alabama in an off season standpoint, normally Alabama gets the best coaches. They get the best players, they get
For
everybody
sure.
they want. I have said this and we'll get into this later on, in a further podcast on it, but I think, a lot of the NCAA ruling and the Supreme Court coming down and allowing kids to get paid. I think the reason why the NCAA just kind of threw their hands up, and they've been one of the most strict
Oh,
organizations as
for
far
sure.
as controlling what happens in their sport, bar none. I mean, it's everybody else. The UFC and USADA are child's play compared to what the NCAA does normally. So for them to just kind of say, "Yeah, pay them whatever you want. We don't really care. Transfer as much as you want." I think that was all put in place because they realized it's bad for business to have Alabama win the national championship every year or every other year, right? It's bad for business to have Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, and I hate to say
Right
it,
there. Yeah.
Georgia, you know, at the top, trying to compete this. So I think this is why they're starting to realize, hey, if we start kind of getting some of those traditional blue blood programs back in and breaking this monopoly up, then we'll kind of do it. Because I mean, don't get me wrong, Alabama's got some deep pockets because of the football team, but you're not competing with Texas or USC or hell, even Nebraska. I mean, you get some people that are desperate enough out here, and you know what I mean. They will
Oh,
spend top dollar to get anything they can. So
for
I
sure.
I, I think for me, part of the reason why is they know, the other side of it too is, who is it? That kid Jalen Milroll is kind of expected to kind of be the next guy there for him.
Yep. Yep.
I mean, he can throw it, but he's more of an athlete. I think they're
He,
going to have to train. They're going to change the offense up a little bit with him.
that dude can run. That guy's built like a brick shit house, by the way. Holy shit. If you've seen him play at all. Yeah, no,
He's
and not to interject too much here, but yeah, I'm with you, man. They have a lot of changes. I'm just saying the guy at the top, Nick Saban, man. A lot of people argued last year, should have they have been in that playoff? I know they had two losses. I know they should have, it was at Tennessee and I believe LSU, right? LSU for sure. It was Tennessee and LSU.
yeah.
I they weren't that far behind. I just knowing Bama the way that what I've seen from Nick Saban, man, I think they're going to be right in that hunt again. Um, that's where I'm at. I know we got a little bit. You have that's a really good take there or stat 125th or 125th. Yeah, that's rough. How many college football teams are there, man? I mean, that's
They're
way in the
expanded
back.
it now. I think there's like 130, something like that
Yeah.
now.
I mean, you're way in the back there with that. That's amazing stat. It is, but Alabama wasn't that impressive at times last year either, from what I saw, especially from the wide receiver production area. Rough. Defense didn't play. God, they looked like shit most of those games, dude. LSU, Tennessee put a lot of points up on those defenses. And Nick Saban, I know, is one of those guys that doesn't stand for that shit. You know what I mean? He's always had usually solid defenses there, especially bend don't break defenses. You know what I mean? You might both throw it on them between the 20s, but boy, it's tough to score on them in the red zone usually. So
Yeah.
that's where I'm at. So I'll leave it at that with that. But I do like your take though. You're exactly right, and I appreciate you explaining why the receiver core is just, to me, I can't believe guys are transferring out of Alabama. That's amazing to me. It used to be the other way around. Everybody wanted to
Yeah.
go there.
And I think, their offensive line didn't look super great last year at times, and they've lost
Mhm.
one of their best offensive line. A couple of offensive linemen have left there too. So it's
Right.
just not good. Really, and I'll say this, and we'll kind of look to finish it up on this. This is the other side of what's kind of got me concerned about Bama. Again, in another episode, we'll do a record prediction for them and everything like that, and maybe look to go a little further into this. But, they did bring in two new coordinators this year. And this is what I mean when I said they didn't have a typical Bama off season. They wanted, who they really wanted, if I'm not mistaken, was Jeremy Pruitt,
Yep.
former
Yep.
Tennessee coach, former
Yep.
defensive coordinator with them after Kirby left.
Yep.
And then that was their defensive coordinator. And they wanted to bring in, I think it was Cliff Kingsbury was who
It
they were high
was.
on.
It was.
If they would have
Yep.
gotten both of them, then, oh my God, that would have been reloaded. And I would have been like, hey, look, forget, Cliff Kingsbury can coach offense, at this level. I know he can, and he could do an elite job at it. And I know Jeremy Pruitt, as much as people want to say, hey, he supported McDonald's and gave players money in the bags, hey, allegedly, right? Allegedly, we have to say, I can't confirm that, but that was who they ultimately wanted. Instead, they bring in Tommy Reese as the offensive coordinator, who was at Notre Dame, and Kevin Steele, who was at Miami last year. And they ranked respectfully 60th in total offense and 65th in total defense.
Right in the middle.
And yeah, I mean, just really right in the middle, very average. and you think about, okay, you pair the loss of production, yes, you've got a lot of talent, but Miami had, a lot of talent arguably last year too. They were
Yeah.
a very young team, and they're in a conference that, if you want me to be honest, if I'm ranking, how they should have stacked up, there's no reason why they shouldn't have finished outside of the top 25 in defense in the ACC.
We could have a whole podcast on Miami easily. Seriously, with what they
We
got
will.
down there.
We will. But and you look at, Notre Dame and Tommy Rees, and yeah, you can make the argument on one side of it. Well, he had a quarterback who's really young and he got hurt, if I'm not mistaken. So then they had to figure it out there. And, still at this level, it doesn't matter. It's next man up. You've got to be able to recruit, especially if you're Notre Dame. You've been a fringe playoff team, for how many years now? They've supposed to have been, this kind of great team there. And for them to be ranked 60th in total offense, this is all just really lining up to kind of be, concerning. Now, I think you make the other argument. Well, who do they go get if they didn't get Kingsbury and they didn't get Pruitt? You know what I mean? Who else do you go to replace him? And that's a great question. I mean, there's a lot of names out there. It's Bama. You would think, okay, they could probably, do something, but I don't know.
No, I agree. I mean, and you bring up a good point. And with this stat, they were dead right in the middle, average. But I just don't see Bama being like that this coming year. I just don't. I don't. Those guys still get players, man. And behind every great player is a great coach, man. And whether it's your defensive line coach, your offensive line coach, you name it. And Bama, like you said, has the best coaching staff almost every freaking year in college football. They get guys all the time, and those guys like Kirby Smart leave and they go to Georgia and kick some ass. So I think that Bama's going to be okay. I do. And I actually think that last year's team, I think they got better at the end of the year. I truly do, even though with the couple losses they had. And if you watched any of those games, I mean, it was amazing as a person that was rooting against Nick Saban to watch those teams win, Tennessee and LSU. But I truly think that in my heart, I hate saying this, but I feel Bama is going to be – are they going to be the Bama that we saw the last 10 years and dominate a decade? No. But I think they're still going to be there with Georgia. I think LSU, in my opinion, I think is going to have a good season this year. I could talk about them a little bit. I'm not going to do that now, but that's another team I kind of like under Brian Kelly, another guy I don't personally care for, but they got a lot of pieces back. I think they overdid it last year. I mean, I thought they looked a lot better than what a lot of people thought they were going to finish last year. So like in Tennessee's in that conference or over there too. So it's going to be tough for Bama. Yes. But I truly don't, I'm not going to write them off. I guess I don't want to go bold prediction on like a record or anything yet, but I think Bama's going to be right there in that hunt again. I do. I can't write them off yet.
So you don't have to give me a record prediction. Let's just make this really simple. Okay. Do they finish at the top of the SEC, in the middle, or at the bottom?
At the top. At the top being what you consider the top. You mean number one over there, or do you mean like top 2, 3? What was your what would you say?
Okay, let's say, again, just for this, do they go to the SEC championship game?
Man, you can get into that playoff without going to that thing, but it's tough. I do. That's a bold take. I do. I'll put my foot in the ground.
All right. We'll put some bets on that. You know what I mean? Again, this is where we draw the line in the sand. This is where we differ, slightly. I think they just miss out. Again, you got to think everything's relative. A bad season, and we're talking like this, you know what I mean? And it's kind of like my Nebraska take. Like I'm talking like they're going to go undefeated or something, and then I throw out 8-4. Right. I think a bad season for Alabama, in my opinion, is if you have 3 losses, 3 or 4 losses. You're in
say that to most programs, though, dude. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would take as a Nebraska fan, a 3-loss season would be like me winning the national championship right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I don't know. I think for me, they finished just outside of the top, somewhere between the, I guess, and this is kind of unfair, but I feel like they're going to finish not at the top, but also not in the middle of the pack either. That just seems way too low for me, and unless Vanderbilt starts recruiting, me to go play quarterback, and be, the hefty righty.
Will Levis did leave Kentucky. He's going to the NFL. Jared Lorenzen. I don't know, man.
I'm just saying, Kentucky, Vanderbilt. you know, they're searching for some quarterbacks, and by God, I got 4 years of eligibility.
Christian Hunt, maybe
2023 Heisman.
next
And
Jamarcus
speaking of,
Russell. There we go.
dang right, bro, light skinned Jamarcus Russell over here.